Writing Ratface, a point-blank limited series on the process of writing a 50,000-word first draft. I am your host, Justin Bendell. This is episode 5. This episode, we discuss week 5 of the process of writing Ratface. In week 5, I have gotten over the middle story hump. This is the part of the story where I run out of clear ideas, and I need to figure out how to turn the page and move the characters towards some kind of climax. I've had climaxes in mind, but nothing in particular, especially at this moment in the creation of the story. The problem with a preconceived climax is the story can end up feeling forced or overly choreographed, so that I can hit a climax in a way that appears earned but truly isn't. I don't want to go through the motions of producing an ending that satisfies a readership. I want an ending that is in alignment with my characters and with the truth of existence on the planet. I don't like things that are too orchestrated. I want things to feel real, realistic, kind of disappointing. Isn't that what noir is all about? Things start bad and they get worse. I think that's going to be part of the story. Not to say that I think Ratface is inherently a noir story to its core. I think there are noir elements. I want a hero's journey as well. But then again, I'm not entirely sold on the notion of the Western hero journey either. So I'm in that state of being in the middle, being at a crossroads. There's multiple forks in the road, and I can take one of them or multiple paths to this sort of climactic conclusion that I haven't written yet. And I have a lot of options available to me, and I'm experimenting with several of them, and it won't be until draft 2 or 3 where I start to narrow in on the ones that are really speaking to me or speaking to the characters. True earning in terms of earning that ending, earning the climactic moment, that's key for me. Sometimes what we think of as feeling earned isn't earned at all. It's just that we're so used to seeing it in Hollywood productions or in Western literature that we no longer recognize it for the choreography and the artifice that it is. I certainly do not want a story that comes across as manufactured artifice. I'd rather not write than have a story that reads that way. That's just me as a writer. I'm a little bit averse to over-structuring my stories. I like the structures to at least be mostly hidden, as many writers do. And why? As I've said, real life doesn't work that way, and I like stories that feel more like real life than like a comic book plot. In the case of Ratface, my favorite part of the writing process has been when I give voice to existential or personal questions through the main character. As I am human, I do a lot of my own processing as I write. My words are Ratface's words. A lot of us have that relationship with certain central characters. They embody things that are deep and important to us as human beings. My curiosities are, on occasion, the curiosities that Ratface exhibits in the story. Not all the time. I don't have an obsession with eating Tuesday blue beans, but there are things about Ratface, questions he asks, things he ponders in real time on the story that I also am pondering at that time, and I'm trying to sprinkle a little bit of myself into the character. Why would I do that? Not because I don't have good ideas for the character, but because if I can instill meaning in this character that connects me to him in an intimate way, I feel more invested in the character's journey. It's not just some rando out there that I'm writing about for no reason. It's a character who I'm writing about because they are embodying things that are deeply meaningful to me, and I want to see how it translates. It's a little bit of prophecy, it's a little bit of playing God, and it's a lot about the process of coping with the shit that's in our heads, the bullshit that we're dealing with, the thoughts we have, our concerns and fears and anxieties, the terrors of the world, the secret joys that we have, the desires we have for things to be different, or maybe to be more enhanced or better or worse or whatever. We can embody ourselves in these characters, and we can let them play out possible narratives that reflect back on our own lives. That's one thing I've been doing with Ratface. He's been taking in a lot of what I have been chewing on this fall, and it's been good. That doesn't lead us to a climax, but it helps me to understand more about who he is and what would be a satisfying evolution of his character from page 1 to page 200. At its heart, this is a structured story about something that happens, which is our inciting incident, a response, the way that our character responds to the situation. This is where the character development comes to play and other plot elements that add to and enhance the tensions of the initial inciting incident, a counter response, and the sort of buildup that leads ultimately to the climax. This is what people like in the way that Western stories are written. But the most interesting part of the story to me is not the build-up to the climax. Yes, the tension is useful. The conflict helps us to feel invested in the story. But to me, as I write, the more I write, the more stories I write, it's the conversations that happen in between. And I think that I'm not alone in this. The plot structure is a device that buys us time and gives us purpose so that we can have the meaningful discussions. Kind of like when we go on a road trip with a good friend or something, and you have a destination in mind, but is the road trip about the destination? Well, the destination is the MacGuffin. We need that in order to justify the road trip itself. But the road trip experience itself, the meaning in it, the value in it, is the conversations along the way, the emotional exchanges, the little things, the subtleties, the nuances, the cups of coffee, the storytelling, the jokes, the shared moments of watching murmurations of starling over a cornfield on the drive, the sunsets. The little things are what matter. Those are the things that we're going to hold on to, not, remember that road trip where we went to point A and then we went to point B? Yes, that was robotically interesting. That's not where the meaning is. That's where the plot is. That's the structure and that's the setup. But the actual meaning comes from the human exchanges, and that's what I'm enjoying about writing Ratface. So, the philosophy of Ratface, the interactions he has with humans and non-humans in this post-apocalyptic city that we're still learning about, the way these interactions shape his philosophy, they're all rich with meaning, and I've been enjoying that story. That's the meat of the story. This is where the heart of the story lies. I want to write the heart of Ratface in this big dying city, surrounded by people who are giving up or losing their minds. Of course, the evolution of the story, I'm realizing, is that Ratface starts out as one person and becomes another person. That other person is inside of him, but it needs to be drawn out through the course of plot machinations and engagement with characters that remind him of who he once was. Meaning I see Ratface as somebody who is closed off to the world, somebody who is limited, somebody who has given up on the world, somebody who is jaded and miserable and does not have compassion for human beings or for the world any longer. He is part of the problem at the beginning, and over the course of the novel, I imagine him through various experiences sort of opening up like a flower, blossoming, coming to be the dynamic, complicated, beautiful person that he thought he would be when he was a young person before life got to him and turned him into a kind of shallow, miserable shell of a human being who has lost hope. And this is the trick of a novel. How do you do that in a way that doesn't feel like you are ham-fisting purpose into a character? How does it feel natural? And that's the difficulty of crafting novels, and that's why we have to draft repeatedly in order to get to those moments where we feel like everything lands in the right kind of way. I want to see what this looks like and feels like, and I want to understand not only the motivations of people's actions in the story, but what their private hearts are telling them. This is the part of the story I love. It takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of rewrites to get there. But nonetheless, here I am at this kind of halfway point, thinking about this story, thinking about the characters on levels other than simply establishing them as characters. Who are they really? How do I show that effectively? That's where I am in week 5. Week 5 is clearly a moment where I'm noting the tension between the parts of the story I like to write, which are the parts I find myself writing, and the necessary setup that I must construct, the structure, the iron girding, the platforming. I'm building a house, I'm building a structure in this city, and the foundational stuff matters. The structure needs to be sound, but it's not the structure itself that gives me joy, that gives me pleasure, or that gives me sort of that philosophical richness that I seek when I write. To ensure that there is an earned emotional payoff at the end of this complicated struggle between Ratface and whoever his villains are, whatever oppression he faces, the structure matters, but it's the rest, the adornments, the facade, the decorative elements of the structure, and the internal elements, the elements that allow us to actually live in the structure, to find meaning in that structure. I guess the bedrooms and bathrooms and music rooms and whatever is inside that building that allows us to live in there and to build our lives within it. That's the kind of stuff that is meaningful to me. Here's an excerpt from this week's writing. This is Ratface. He's reflecting on his own life. This is a part where I feel like I'm trying to get to know him by kind of interrogating him. What does it mean to feel reprieve in a world that is so vile and lost? It doesn't feel fair to have a moment of rest when so many suffer endlessly for nothing. Humans don't have to suffer. Humans don't have to struggle, not in this way. There are ways to do this thing called life that are less hurtful and cold and stupid. Yet here we are, and there is so little we can do to fix what we see as easily fixable. It is not that it's not easily fixable. That's a fallacy. Yet here we are, and there's so little we can do to fix what we see as easily fixable. It's not that it's not easily fixable. It is impossible to fix. We're so near impossible that those who demand the impossible lose, always, to those who want the vile conditions to stay the way they are. As he sits and smokes his green leaf, Ratface remembers the friends and neighbors and comrades that he has lost over the years, and how very few of them were lost for good reasons, or natural reasons. Sure, Rico died from seizures, but he touched an electrical wire that shouldn't have been where it was. That was neglect on the part of the city, which was largely due to mismanagement caused by racist and classist violence. How far back do you have to go to find the source of so many problems? That's always been human fear and insecurity, the fear of millions who would rather toe the line and say no than to open their hearts and say yes. What is an open heart, Ratface wonders, but a heart that says yes? His own heart has been closed for so long, but suddenly he has feelings that he hasn't felt since he was a child, feelings that he has not felt since before the camps. He has seen people with compassion. He's seen people with something approximating love. Did the kid cause this? Ratface muses. The kid has changed him. The kid has played a role in opening him up. And this is going to change things in the story at the halfway point. Ratface goes from one type of character to somebody different, somebody empowered, somebody embracing the complexities of life and seeing through the darkness that maybe there is another way. There's a path forward, a path toward hope, a path toward freedom, a path toward some way where the city becomes more than a place where people die in misery. That's week 5. I might leave it at that. Yes, I will. I'm going to make this a short episode. Week 5 is a halfway point. Week 5, we are getting to ask ourselves critical questions about the characters, and I'm starting to see some paths forward that I'll share with you in week 6 and week 7, which is going to be the next episode. So reach out if you have any questions. I'm sorry about the hit or missness of this podcast series. Some weeks I record and I'm on the ball and I'm thinking about the writing in a positive way and I'm feeling good. And some weeks I'm struggling with health stuff or other things and I'm just not there. So that was week 5. I'll see you again for episode 6, which will be out in a couple weeks. Take care, everybody.